Key point 1. How to live wholeheartedly. We are ashamed and afraid to be ordinary. We are scared because we feel never good enough, never perfect enough, never thin enough, never powerful enough, never successful enough, never smart enough, never certain enough, never safe enough, and never extraordinary enough. Narcissism is the standout feature of our culture. We lack the empathy to be compassionate and connected people. This sense of shame fuels our culture's scarcity mindset, as everyone becomes acutely focused on what's missing. There's a constant sense of something being limited or insufficient. We spend considerable time tallying what we possess, desire, and lack, and how it compares to others' possessions, needs, and desires. Our lives, relationships, families, and communities are measured against impossible, media-promoted ideals of flawlessness. According to Lynn Twist, author of The Soul of Money, scarcity is the never-enough dilemma. She states, "Our initial thought upon waking is, I didn't sleep enough," followed by, I don't have enough time, whether factual or not. This notion of insufficiency automatically pops into our minds, without us even pausing to scrutinize it. The majority of our days and lives are consumed in articulating, lamenting, fretting, or stressing over our lack of something. From the moment we wake, before our feet even hit the floor, we feel deficient and deprived of something. And as we end our day, our minds are bombarded with a tally of what we failed to acquire or accomplish. We fall asleep burdened by these thoughts and awaken to this scarcity narrative. The scarcity mindset is at the core of envy, greed, bias, and conflicts with life. We can deal with the shame and the culture of scarcity it causes by not necessarily living in abundance, but by living wholeheartedly, by being vulnerable and worthy, by facing uncertainty, exposure, and emotional risks, and understanding that we, in our individual capacities, are more than enough. Key point 2. 4 myths that keep you from living. Living wholeheartedly is hard because of 4 myths attached to vulnerability. Yet each of these myths can be discredited. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. Brene Brown. The misconception that vulnerability equals weakness is the first myth. We often view vulnerability as a flaw because we link it with negative emotions like fear, shame, grief, sadness, and disappointment. We prefer to avoid discussing these emotions, even though they significantly influence our lives, love, work, and leadership. Vulnerability is not a flaw, but the origin of love, belonging, joy, bravery, empathy, and creativity. It is the foundation of hope, responsibility, and genuineness. Embracing vulnerability in all aspects of life, social, financial, emotional, and spiritual, will bring more clarity to our purpose and enrich our lives with deeper meaning. The second is the I don't do vulnerability myth. We think ourselves so strong that we are not prone to vulnerability. We believe vulnerability is something that happens to other people. That is not true. Everyone is vulnerable because everyone faces the uncertainty, the risk, and the emotional exposure life brings us. The social relationships that form the bedrock of our lives, without which we cannot thrive, make each and every one of us vulnerable. The third is the thinking that vulnerability means we let it all hang out. Celebrity culture drives this thought. Stars share the most intimate details of their lives with the public. Vulnerability is not about letting it all hang out. Instead, it is based on mutuality, boundaries, and trust. Oversharing, purging, or indiscriminate disclosure is not a vulnerability. Vulnerability is sharing our feelings and experiences with people who have earned the right to hear them. The fourth and last is the we can go it alone myth. Our culture's rugged individualism, the go ye and conquer the world attitude, drives this myth. No one can truly go it alone in life. We require support. We need individuals in our lives who allow us to experiment with new ways of being without passing judgment. We need people who will pull us off the ground when life kicks our butts. And as social animals, that kind of support is critical to us. Key point 3. Truth and dare. We have moral courage and dare greatly when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable by being seen without caring what other people might think. Sharing something we've created is a perfect example of daring greatly. sharing is a vulnerable but essential part of engaged and wholehearted living. Let's imagine we have created a piece of artwork we want to share with friends. Most of us attach our self-worth to how well the artwork was received. If our friends love it, we feel worthy. If they don't, we feel worthless. Courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen. Brene Brown. This situation makes us do one of two things. We either strip away the most creative or innovative touches to make revealing it to our friends a less risky experience, or we share the art in its most creative or innovative form and get crushed when the reception doesn't meet our expectations. Shame tells us we shouldn't have tried and are not good enough. Don't let shame crush you. Shame resilience is an essential skill. Our desire is for friends to appreciate and perhaps admire our creations. Yet our self-esteem is not at stake. We recognize our identity extends beyond the work we produce. While it's disheartening if friends don't value it, the endeavor reflects our actions, not our essence. No matter the result, we've already embraced the challenge, fully aligned with our principles and the person we aspire to be. When our sense of worth isn't jeopardized, we're more inclined to embrace bravery and risk exposing our genuine talents and gifts. We become more open to soliciting, accepting, and using feedback. We become engaged and tenacious. We expect to try again until we get it right. We become more innovative and creative in our efforts. In the pursuit of daring greatly, errors and shortcomings recur. Failures, mistakes, and critiques will happen. Yet, to navigate life's inevitable letdowns, painful experiences, and heart touches of a fully embraced life, we must not confuse failure with being undeserving of love, belonging, and joy. If we do, we'll cease to show up and try again. Shame resilience means declaring, "This is painful. This is disheartening, perhaps even crushing. However, accolades and approval aren't my guiding principles. My true value lies in courage, and I've just demonstrated bravery." Take a step back, shame. Key point 4. Are you masking your vulnerability? Most of us feel safer and stronger behind a mask. We don't want anyone to see through our vulnerabilities. We do this in one of three ways: foreboding joy, perfectionism, and numbing. We hide our vulnerabilities because we want to protect ourselves from discomfort. Foreboding joy is when we approach our joyful moments with deep foreboding. It is the fear that comes over us in our otherwise joyful moments. For example, when we watch our children sleeping and suddenly fear for their safety. It rises out of our culture of scarcity and fear. We never feel safe, we never feel certain, and we never feel sure. We do not feel worthy of the joy we experience, so it comes across as a step to the next disaster in our lives. In these moments of joy, we become very vulnerable. A constant attitude of gratitude in our joyful moments is the way to dare greatly and fight off foreboding joy. Perfectionism is a harmful and addictive mindset that convinces us that if we appear perfect and perform everything flawlessly, we can evade or lessen the harsh emotions of shame, judgment, and blame. Rather than shielding us from shame, judgment, and blame, perfectionism actually magnifies these difficult emotions. It becomes a compulsive habit because we don't challenge its flawed reasoning and get wrapped up in striving to look and do everything impeccably. We can fight it and dare greatly by appreciating the beauty of our cracks, by making the journey from "what will people think" to "I am enough." This journey starts with cultivating shame resilience, self-compassion, and embracing our narratives. It involves acknowledging our truths about our identity, origins, beliefs, and the imperfect reality of our existence. It's about allowing ourselves leniency, valuing our imperfections, and being kinder and gentler with ourselves and others. Numbing is emotional seclusion, a sense of being barred from human connection and feeling powerless to alter the situation. We all numb our feelings to dampen our sense of vulnerability. An example is when we take to the bottle or get extra busy when faced with a crisis or tragedy. Numbing dulls the discomfort of our tough experiences, but also dampens the excitement of our experiences of love, joy, belonging, creativity, and empathy. There is no selective way to numb emotions. You numb one, you numb all. You numb the dark, you also numb the light. We can dare greatly and fight off numbing by setting boundaries, finding true comfort, and cultivating spirit. We do this by feeling worthy of love and belonging and cultivating connections with family and close friends. Key point 5. Building shame resilience. The difficulties in our educational system and workplace challenges often reflect one another. No business or school can prosper without creativity, innovation, and learning. The primary risk to these elements is disengagement from corporate leaders, executives or managers, or educational leaders, administrators or teachers. This issue stems from the old-fashioned belief that human organizations should function as machines. Unlike mechanical systems, human organizations are not made of inanimate parts. People within these organizations possess values, emotions, perspectives, motivations, and personal histories, unlike gears or wheels. An organization is defined not by its physical infrastructure, but by the relational networks of its people. To fight off this disengagement of the leadership of our corporations and schools, we need to re-engage by rehumanizing work and education. This challenge can be overcome by embracing vulnerability and acknowledging and addressing shame. However, we must first understand how shame incites fear, stifles vulnerability tolerance, and eradicates engagement, innovation, creativity, productivity, and trust in corporate and educational settings. Shame shows up in corporations or schools when leadership favors some and harasses others. Shame is part of an organization's culture if the preferred management tool is criticizing subordinates in the presence of colleagues, delivering public reprimands, or setting up reward systems that intentionally belittle, shame, or humiliate people. In schools, many teachers shame students over perceived inadequacies or an inability to learn. A staggering 85% of adults remember a school event from their childhood that was so humiliating it altered their self-perception as learners. They suffered a specific incident where their teachers told them they weren't good at something. We learn shame and how to shame in our families and somewhat believe it's an effective way to manage people or run a classroom. And when shaming becomes common in the workplace or at our places of learning, people disengage to protect themselves. They don't show up, refuse to contribute, or stop caring. Some even lie, steal, cheat, and rationalize it. Others quit work or school altogether. We can fight off shaming in our corporations and schools by making them shame resilient and by supporting leaders in these corporations or schools who are willing to encourage honest conversations about the negative effects of shaming. We can search where and how shame functions in our corporations or schools, especially how we engage coworkers or students. Building the shame-resilient culture is also possible when we enable individuals, whether colleagues or students, to openly share their shaming experiences and coping strategies. Ultimately, leaders and members of organizations and schools, including employees and students, should be educated in providing and receiving feedback that encourages growth and engagement. Did you know? According to Brene Brown, shame and guilt are different. While guilt is feeling bad about your actions, shame is feeling bad about you. Key point 6. Be the adult you want your children to become. Great parenting is not so much what we know about parenting. Rather, it is about who we are as parents. It is not whether or not we parent the right way, but whether or not we are the adults we want our children to grow up to be. We all want our children to be happy, make friends, succeed professionally, and stay safe in the world, but have no idea how to guarantee these outcomes. We would love to have a handbook that guides us through parenting, answers all our secret questions, guarantees the outcomes we want, and minimizes our vulnerabilities. Unfortunately, no such manual exists. There is no such thing as perfect parenting. We cannot guarantee any outcomes we desire in parenting our children. Parenting is filled with uncertainty and self-doubt, which makes it a minefield for shame and self-judgment. It's the reason why all shades of parents have made it into our culture. The attachment parent, the helicopter parent, tiger moms, and aloof dads. It's the reason there is an ongoing parenting conversation that does nothing to help matters. Our feelings of being worthy and sufficient originate in our primary families. It's where we discover our self-identity and learn to interact with the world as children. Here, we chart a path that will either lead us to spend much of our lives reclaiming our self-esteem or empower us with hope, bravery, and resilience for our life's journey. Our actions, thoughts, and feelings are ingrained in us and shaped by our surroundings. The family we grow up in molds our perception of love, belonging, and self-worth through what we hear, what we're told, and crucially, by observing our parents' interactions with the world. It means that as parents, we hold numerous impactful moments in guiding our children to comprehend, utilize, and value their innate traits and develop resilience against life's challenges. Our children are watching us closely, and they are copying us too. This situation makes who we are and how we engage with the world much stronger predictors of how well our children will fare in the world rather than what we know about parenting. The vulnerability inherent in parenting can be daunting at times, however. We must embrace it as it forms an abundant and fruitful environment for teaching and fostering connection, significance, and love. We must embody the values we seek to impart. Conclusion: daring greatly by being vulnerable or living wholeheartedly is a good thing. It helps us live our full and authentic lives, free of any pressure from society's culture of scarcity. It will keep us focused on what matters, like modeling our lives for our children to copy, and exhibiting great leadership in our corporations or educational institutions. It will also remove our focus from what distracts us, such as keeping up with the Joneses. Our society would be better off for it too. And every time we fail, being vulnerable will give us the inner courage to pick ourselves up and keep trying until we succeed. Try this. Don't be afraid to reach out for help or support when you need it. Learn to forgive yourself for your mistakes and past experiences. Set healthy boundaries in relationships and interactions.